listening to Tony Slattery's Rambling Club, and you're most welcome.
Hello, my name's Paul Carmichael.
And I'm Alan Lear.
And welcome once again to the Rambling Club. It's Friday, it's 5 to 5, which means the doors to the club are open once again. And there's a knock at the door. Al, do you want to get that and see who that is?
Yeah, certainly. If it's carol singers again, I'm going to tell them what I told them last time.
What was that?
Buy a calendar.
Let's open the door and see who it is.
Hello, I'm selling fortune cookies for the local church. They're all the same. They say you're going to hell. Your people disgust me.
It's the Reverend Robin Ince. You've come round again to see us.
I know, so soon as well.
Yes, I know. How have you been keeping?
All right. Yes, everything's been pretty good with the fortune cookies. Yeah, the things have been. There's something else we can talk about later on. Actually, I suddenly realised let's just get this bit over and go on to the next bit, because I've suddenly realised I was going to tell you about the Ambassadors of Death, because I've noticed how many Doctor Who VHSs you have in your shed, and I was thinking the Ambassadors of Death, which is season 7. Yeah, because I made a little film about season 7.
Are the Ambassadors of Death the ones who give you Ferrero Rocher if you've got a nut allergy?
That's a lovely thing, by the way. I'll tell you something I have done since I last saw you was I saw Inside Number 9, the play.
Stage one.
Oh my God, it's fantastic.
Really?
It is filled with... I cannot reveal too much for fear that your listeners may well go and see it, and I don't want to give anything away apart from... Well, what I can tell you is the way that it opens, that this gives one is... So everyone's just sat there, and one thing I liked is it started on time and everyone turned up on time, because I get very bored that in the West End in particular, they'll wait for me because I'm in row C and all of that stuff, right? No, everyone must have known you've got to be there at 7:30. At 7:30, just everything went immediately back and went bang, and everyone went bloody hell. Was even warped on stage, and we've already jumped. And then there's a lot of I was thinking, because there was something you mentioned just a moment ago which reminded me of Bernie Clifton's dressing room, which is the one part of Inside Number 9 from the TV that there is quite a large chunk of in it for very, very good reasons. But that's one of my favourite episodes as well. It's wonderful.
But we're looking forward to seeing it in April.
Well, there's certain things in it, you would just... You know, when you watch something, you just think, there is so much thought that's gone into this. That every little detail, and that then you will replay it in your head. And the beautiful thing as well, I think the last time I saw you, I'd also seen Reese and Steve down at an event where we were watching George Layton and Robin Asquith.
That's right.
And just the quality of the fact that after the show, they spent half an hour giving everyone signatures and selfies and stuff like that, in the same way the Robin Asquith George Layton thing, even if it wasn't their event or anything, them just sitting there having a drink, and then they gave everyone so much time, and that is the mark of quality.
Absolutely, it is. Well, shall we take a spin with the bingo machine and see where we can end up today?
Let us do it.
Okay, here we go. Off we go.
Tony's enchanted bingo machine. A curious contraption of cogs, levers, and glowing buttons that hums with ominous energy. This machine generates 3 completely random numbers. These numbers are fed directly into the Dewey Decimal System, the arcane reference system by which books and their contents are categorized. In this way, the bingo machine conjures from thin air a topic of conversation so enthralling, so wildly unexpected, that it leaves the members of the Rambling Club both bewildered and vaguely excited. Thus, another evening is saved from the brink of boredom, thanks to Tony's marvellous, possibly haunted and entirely inexplicable bingo machine.
Well, here we are in the great outdoors, ready to begin our first ramble. And the numbers selected by the machine are
7, 4, 8.
748, 748. And that means that the subject is... Glass.
Oh.
Glass. In all its varied forms.
One of my favourite things is to walk over a glass bridge.
Really?
Yeah, there's one in the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And I'm sure you've seen the footage of, I think it's in Japan, isn't it, where there's a really long glass bridge and it drives everyone slightly insane because there is a point where you'll break up. But the one at San Francisco Museum of Art is just narrow enough for people to not vomit on it. And that really does change the experience. I mean, that's what you need to do. If you're going to the Japanese one, if you go towards the end of the day, you can't see through the glass because it's just covered in the sick of anxiety. But, yeah.
I went on a rope bridge a long time ago to Tintagel Castle.
Oh, yeah.
Oh!
But this is going back maybe to when I was about 8 or something, and I was told by my dad, it's absolutely fine, get across, don't be a girl. So I did. And then the bloody thing starts doing this halfway across. I have never liked a bridge since. Big bridges even. The Runcorn Bridge, I'm not keen on going across in a car even because of that.
Tintagel, of course, has the hotel that is on the opposite hill has the Excalibur. I know that's it. But I remember Tintagel, the thing that I find scary about it is it's one of those hills that is built on where there's a point where you cannot see beyond it and it looks like it's a dead drop. And so when I was there with my son when he was 4 years old, so you're just in perpetual anxiety.
Yes. I remember that anxiety because the dog was with us and the dog at some point just vanished and dog just reappeared quite happily, of course, because there was a lovely path down. But no, glass bridges, because aren't there some as well where you walk across and they're actually they've done something to them so that it creates the idea that they are cracking. I've seen those.
Yes. Oh,
There's a level of malice in architecture that sometimes is not talked about enough.
if you go up to the top of the Blackpool Tower, that has a glass floor. I don't know if it's glass or if it's perspex, but there's a section right at the top of it where you can walk out onto this see-through floor and look directly down beneath your feet. On one of the buildings beneath the Blackpool Tower, some wag has drawn a chalk outline of a body.
Glass, I just think old churches again and rambling back to those sort of places and being able to enjoy those without any religious identification going on at all. And I took a group of students about 6 months ago to Stratford-upon-Avon to watch Twelfth Night. Brilliant performance. But the thing that some of them loved the most, two of them in particular, was going into the church and seeing the glass. And then it being explained to them how so much of this was new and they have fragments of the old and fragments of the new all knitted together after it was originally destroyed. But then they were told they had to pay a £5 to see Shakespeare's grave, and that rather put them off.
Yes.
But the decoration in there, also they did point out that he just looked like a fat version of you, I was told, about the bust. But the glasswork in there was absolutely beautiful. I loved all that.
And I'll give you the Chick Murray joke.
Well,
I won't deliver it like Chick Murray, so it's not funny, but it is when Chick Murray says it, which is, we've got stained glass above our front door, so it's bloody pigeons. See ya.
Well, we were talking last night to a friend who, Jess, whose parents bought a deconsecrated chapel, and are doing it up. And they are doing it up themselves. It's been a project that's taken 20 years apparently, and they're learning all the craft as they go, including how to make your own stained glass windows. So they're installing their own leaded stained glass where they live.
Cromwell, that bastard Cromwell. Because you go around, there's a lot of beautiful churches in Norfolk, and then they're in the middle of nowhere. You know that fantastic thing where you go past a church and you think, well, why is there a church here? And then sometimes you're like, that's near the plague village. The church remains, the village is long gone. But you go there, and it's somewhere near Southwold. There's this beautiful church, this kind of marshland. And you look up, and you can even see where kind of shot went into the ceiling when they were shooting out the unstained glass
windows.
Yeah.
Because presumably they considered it idolatrous because Cromwell was pretty.
It was just because he wasn't pretty. Sorry. I like that down. Cromwell was pretty. Strange podcast this has become.
Such attractive words, so symmetric.
But yeah, no, I think it was because anything that had any sense of celebration was against his religion. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Puritan rule was terrifying, wasn't it? Where basically everything, if it didn't acknowledge the suffering of Christ on the cross, then it was out. So Christmas was out, of course, for his fuss.
Yeah, that's right.
And one of the key things about windows, people have given loads of reasons for window tax. But one of the reasons was, of course, the church didn't like them, because if you open your curtains and you're looking out and it's a beautiful sunny, you're not thinking about Jesus on the cross there, are you?
Yeah.
So that was a reason why, it's austerity on a grand scale.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Somebody once said, didn't they, Puritanism is the fear that someone somewhere may be having fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was seeing somebody online the other day, it was American, and they were saying they'd seen a picture of a building with bricked up windows, and they said, I'm always interested to know, what did people see through a window that made them want to brick it up? And I said, well, in England, it might have been a tax collector.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, one of the villages that sprung to mind there is, no, how's it pronounced? Is it Eam or Eam? EYA.
It's Eam. It's Eam. Yeah.
Which
Is that the Derbyshire?
Yes, it is, yeah. And there was a wonderful BBC Two play for today in 1973, The Roses of Eam. But it was so well done in studio. They've recreated the village, but you can go to the village and walk around, and you know who lived in that house. You know when the family died, and there's the grave right there as well. But the whole village... Now, they were the first village, if memory serves, to try and contain the virus, weren't they? Just at the boundary of the village, there's a stone, and the stone has a hole in it, and it used to be filled with vinegar. And they would leave their money in the vinegar because they knew that purified the money, and people would come along and drop things off at the boundary, so they were able to barter. But they basically put themselves into lockdown, in the I think it was the early 1600s, which is remarkable foresight.
So who wrote Roses of Eam? Because I know you'll know.
I do, David Saville,
Right.
who did a lot of Play for Today's. And it was actually written for Play for Today, and then it became a theatre play afterwards. But a cracking piece of work. But we are so lucky, aren't we, to have that amount of social history. I think.
Yeah.
What that made me think of is there's a pub in Conway called the Black Boy. Which is named after a servant boy. But that's not relevant really. But it's built in an old monastery building, and right by the door is a font that would have been filled with holy water. And the reason it's right by the door is because at the time this monastery would have been slap bang in the middle of Conway's red light district. So it was for the monks to bless themselves whenever they entered or left the monastery, so infected by the Sodom outside.
I wonder if there was actually a bit of more than that going on, because there was quite an interesting relationship, wasn't there, between the church and the sex industries and the theatres and that sort of thing. There was always... They knew of each other and they worked with each other. The Cardinal's Hat, which was the big whorehouse in London, which was just round the corner from the Globe Theatre, realised there was very little point having the women work there at 2:00 in the afternoon because the plays were on. So there's a period when the top floor of the Globe was rented out exclusively to the Cardinal's Hat. So you could be stood there watching Hamlet, and you get to Act 4 and you're a bit bored. You nip up to the 3rd floor, you spend a bit of time there, you come back down, Hamlet's still not got back from England. But a lovely business relationship between them.
That's like you must have seen The Hour of the Pig.
Yes.
Yeah, which is incredible. Have you seen The Hour of the Pig?
Is that one Colin Firth?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's very... because it has various things in that, including the fact that on the last night when Colin Firth has kind of not got necessarily the result that he'd wanted, and he kind of realises what a dismal place it is, and he says to the what's his name? It's Jim thing from Downton Abbey, and plays Philip Marlowe's dad in.
I want to say Norton, but I'm wrong there.
That was Jim. Yeah. Anyway, but he goes, why don't we just go to a whorehouse or something? And he goes, what do you mean? We're in one. And the guy's not realised that every morning when this serving girl has gone, the cock crow's early this morning, sir. That's all part of the
arrangement.
Bed, breakfast, and bordello. But it's got so, and it has. When you were talking about the church, these wonderful moments where you see Ian Home running yet again through the woods away from another angry husband, and he's the priest who's just having sex. And And at one point, Colin Firth goes, but I mean, the Bible, though, surely says, oh, that's not for us. That book's not for us. And it's filled with those kind of things. It's the one that starts off with there's a donkey and a man both with nooses around the neck because the man's had sex with a donkey.
Yeah.
And then a priest runs through, goes, stop, stop, stop. The donkey's been pardoned, and you just see the man's. You see the donkey having the news. But it's a really that piece of work because the director, gosh, I should remember his name. He also did Shalkin the Painter, amongst other things, and he somehow found out. I don't know quite how we ended up never meeting, but we met on social media or in an email, I think. That I loved his film. And there's only, I think someone like Estonia released the version that hadn't been ruined by Weinstein. So it doesn't have all the voiceover that was added and stuff like that. It's the nearest it comes to. And it was such a lovely thing for him to do. He died I think, last year or 2 years ago, the director. But it was like, I've heard you really like this. Would you like it? I've got one copy that is my version. And I'll send you the instructions of how to get rid of the subtitles. Yeah. I thought it was, really. But yeah, those films, again, that makes me think of The Glass as well. So another thing I was thinking about Glass is there's a Lee Barry exhibition about to open in the Tate Modern, or perhaps opens the day we're recording this. And I remember one of my favourite, for those of you who don't know who Lee Barry was, he was Lucian Freud model, very voluptuous, bald man, and he would wear the most incredible costumes and strange hats and masks, just to very much a kind of 80s counterculture thing. And that play Taboo, which is about him and Boy George.
Yes.
And he did a thing once which was him reclining behind glass. So he couldn't see the audience. It was one of those two-way mirrors. And people would come in and they would see him really like a zoo animal, just parading around with makeup and everything. And there was a film made of different people's reaction to it. And it's great because you have lots of art people going, I'm not really sure what Lee's trying to do. I was actually rather bored. And then you have someone who's obviously just popped in and just like, just a normal person goes, oh, wasn't that a lot of fun? Was that just fun? The interest was just such a... Who would want to... And that bit of removing all of the pressure of going, but is it art? Yeah. Going, fuck, but is it art? Mm-hmm. Are you getting anything from it? Is anything... And this woman, and it's so... I forget who made the film, but it's the perfect counterpoint. And the way that Lee Barry was behind that glass as well, because you do, every now and again, you think, oh yeah, Lee Barry's become a tiger now. You just can't help but feel that.
Yeah.
Didn't Harlan Ellison do that sort of thing, part of demystifying the creative process? He had a period where he would just sit in the bookshop window and write short stories. Yeah. So people could look at him and go, oh, it's just a bloke doing a thing. There's no magic to it. Anyone can do that.
Wow. I love that. I absolutely love that. I think anything that can demystify it and open it up, that has to be worthwhile, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was chatting to someone in... with my friend Joanna Neary, who's enormously talented. She's going to be touring with Johnny Vegas in the stage version of Ideal. And a friend of hers just suddenly popped in. We got talking about art. And he said, I worked in a car washing place. He said, I had lots of piercings and stuff. And this woman who was an art student took a fancy to me. And so we started going out. He said, and then one day I went to an exhibition with her. And I said something about one of the objects. And she just went, what do you know? And I think that is the archetypal thing, isn't it? Which is what you're not allowed in the gallery until you've done this amount of research.
Yeah.
And you go, no. And people are so scared of offering an opinion because they go, what if it's the wrong opinion? And then I think that's why you get so much negative stuff in art. That's why, the press, whenever it's the Turner Prize or whatever, will go, oh, can you believe this old rubbish? Because people will be always too scared to consider it to be anything more than this old rubbish.
Well, people don't realise, I think, so often that, there's the end product, but what's the process? Where does it come from? Art cannot exist in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's got to be created, and that's the interesting bit. How do we get from there to that final bit? Like rehearsing a play, I've always thought that rehearsing a play, essentially that the performance is the bit you've got to do.
Yeah.
Almost like you were saying just before, you've never quite finished, and you've never finished a rehearsal. It's like, oh, we've got to do it now. I was enjoying that film bit. But, anything that makes it more accessible.
So who was the writer who said a book is never finished, it's just abandoned?
De Francis, didn't we? Yeah. That's how they always end them with. Oh no, the horse has run away. But no, I think I've realised the older I get that nearly all of my friends, into anyone who works in any form of the arts, they all just have to keep creating. So, like, Joanna Neary is like, we're working on a little book together at the moment, and it's no publisher, and we just work. But, like, I look at all the sketches that she pulls out when we're working on different stuff. And I know that she's another person who, like me, always has to have 7 books in your bag, because you never quite know how your mood might take you. You can't just take 1 book, that's just not enough. And so everything's being, and I was very lucky. About a month ago, I went to Prospect Cottage, Derek Jarman's house. And it was a holy trip. It really felt. Yeah, it's like I know the people who look after it now, and they've been saying for ages that, do you want to, one night come to Derek Jarman's house? And we got there at dusk, and that was perfect. They said, "Oh, sorry, you're not seeing it daylight." I said, "For the first visit, because I know I'm going back at some point. For the first visit, it's perfect to see it, where you can't quite get all the details, and you're walking around, and you're quite careful on the pebbles, because you're not sure when the pebbles are actually going to turn into a garden, and when they're a path, and all of those things that I did with that." And one of the things that I loved when we went inside was getting that sense of the fact that he always had to work. So there's this workbench, he had this little kind of workshop, and there's just great big dollops of paint upon dollops of paint upon dollops of paint. There's a beautiful Maggie Hambling painting of him at the side. And then one of the people said to me, he said, yeah, when people used to come and visit him, they'd have to know they weren't having a weekend away with Derek. Well, during the day, you'll be making stuff as well, or you'll be going for a wander, or you'll be finding, hagstones, or whatever you're going to be doing. Yeah. And I was told that when it was really cold there, when he first got it, and the Prospect Cottage, for those of you listening who don't know, it's on basically, there's marsh one side, there's sea on there, it is so flat, and then there's Dungeness, what used to be Nuclear Power Station, glowing in the background. In fact, New Brighton, where I am at the moment, feels a little bit like that. You see all the cranes going, all of that, and they said, it'd get really cold, and it would be Simon Fisher-Turner, the composer, and Tilda Swinton and Derek Jarman, all snuggling up together on the sofa under a big blanket, watching Cilla Black on Blind Date. And I love that. I know we've talked about this before, I think, on the pub, is that beautiful thing where we always presume that highfalutin people, or everyone, that their interests will never be of what we might call low culture or whatever. And that's the joy, isn't it? Which is you go, no. Again, they are not just there going, well, I think tonight we'll just have to watch a Tarkovsky film, which is still time well spent, ocean hands. But they are, going, oh, let's just all sit here, shivering, watching Blind Date.
Well, Joe Orton in his diary, doesn't he? He makes, there's an entry where he talks about watching Doctor Who that night, where Patrick Troughton Doctor Who, and he gets quite excited about the new young companion in the kilt.
Yeah,
Slattery. So, but Joe Orton sat there watching that, that gives that connection to him then, doesn't it?
But it's like Clive James, isn't it? It's like I've incredibly respected critic, speaks 5 languages, holds apparently a repertoire of 200 paintings in his head. Spends his weekends translating Dante into Tertia Rima, which you can't do in English, but he's doing it just because he feels like it. And what are you going to do next week on the telly, Clive James? I'm going to do some incredible shit, actually. Thanks for asking. I'm going to interview Bernie Clifton, and then we're all going to watch a Japanese game show where people have to nail each other to the floor for money.
Well, there's like Antoine de Caunes as well, isn't it? Which is, you have Rapido, which was a mid-90s kind of... Was it Rapido? No, there was Rapido, and then there was the what was the rude boy?
Eurotrash. So
Eurotrash.
That was part of Def 2.
That's right.
On Def 2, yeah.
But in France, he was also known as someone who wrote incredible novels, philosophical. To be, and like mentioned, those Japanese game shows is a good example of how a lot of our culture in particular, I think, wishes you to be a single thing. It's extremely confusing. And Takeshi's Castle, which is originally Takeshi Kitano, who was both an amazing slapstick comedian and also makes these incredible existential gangster thrillers, which really are they're utterly remarkable. And you go, and he can do both those things. Like, you look at all his films, you go, why haven't they ever released his film Getting Emmy? And then you see that it's kind of not quite up there with Kentucky Fried Movie, and you go, okay, I do understand why that one may well not translate to the art house market. But to be both art house and also a game show person and also a slapstick comedian.
Well, it's like in the film Being John Malkovich, isn't it? Where the character that, what's his name? The Cusack.
So you could say, the character that... No, wait, I forget what he's called.
John Cusack is an aspiring puppeteer, and he takes over John Malkovich's body. And then Malkovich goes, I'm sick of being an actor, I want to be a puppeteer. And his agent goes, okay, and makes a 5-second phone call, and then goes, right, you're a puppeteer, it's done. Of course, the joke is you can't do that. It's not actually possible in Western culture to make that kind of handbrake turn in how the public perceives who you are.
But I remember, and this is something that we've been talking about a lot, because of course the president of the Rambling Club, as we know, is still in the toilet, week whatever it is, but he did say he may be some time. But something that was said about Tony, this awful word, ubiquitous. But it's just, of course, people like to pigeonhole you. And they like to say he's the funny one. But then here he is being brilliant in this film, in this very serious role. How can that be? And there he is on stage in this musical. How can these correlate? And there does seem to be such a difficulty in this country accepting that people can do more than one thing. It's stay late.
Do more than one thing.
What?
Or, yeah. And it's, because, I mean, he's the best thing in Peter's Friends by some... But I remember as well, there is that thing where when there were only 4 channels, and now we look at this incredible omnipresence of certain performers, and there's 100 channels. And you go, but those people, it's not like it's increased the choice. So I think with Tony, there is that that thing where you go, at that point, it was just the easiest thing to do was to go, oh no, it's him again. Yeah. Whereas not enough people are saying that about Jimmy Carr and all the others.
Yeah, it's when there's only 2 outlets, there are 4 channels, but only 2 of them are really outlets for an alternative comedian. It's very easy to go, oh, he's everywhere. No, he's on 2 shows at the same time.
Yeah. I remember talking to an actor, Stuart Damash, is it? No, Stuart. Guy, he used to be in 8.5 Hot Mum, and then he was in The Chief with Martin Shaw. A very tall Scottish actor.
Stuart McGugan,
yeah.
Hey.
And he was in Comedians, and I met him afterwards, the Trevor Griffiths play. And I said, oh, you seem to be really busy, because I'd seen him in loads of stuff. He went, no. He said, I've had a really quiet year, but I've been in 3 series, which only took 3 weeks to film. But it looks like I've been really busy.
No.
Because you can turn on again and go, oh, another 9 o'clock thriller, and there you are. So actually,
No.
And yet I can remember being very young and seeing Stuart McGugan on It Ain't Half Hot Mum, which my parents loved, and presenting Play School.
Yeah.
At the same time, and no problem there.
Well, the one thing we didn't know as well, which was how much the folk scene of Britain infected children's TV shows. So you have Tony Arthur, who we would have known as, Tony Arthur, who's there with Big Ted and Little Ted.
Yeah.
And then find out that she is, if you see Stuart Lee near Tony Arthur, you can just see him, all of his particles are just distributing across the room as he kind of slowly, the entropy speeds up with just being in such a majestic presence. And then you've got Ralph McTell, a great protest singer as well. His songs, at the same time he was singing Tickle on the Tummer down at Alphabet Zoo, he was also singing songs of police brutality and murders that were happening in the cells. And then you've got, Neil is on Puddle Lane. I see down there somewhere you've got your Bonzo Dog Doodah band, your collection there, and you think of all the different things. I mean, he's another good example of someone who is such an interesting... Well, we think of actually, Neil was interested in so many different things. And then that immediately makes me think of someone who's just died, which is David Lynch. Again, David Lynch had that thing, which is he had to work every day. So he would go in and he would start his painting. If he wasn't making a film, or he would go, I can make a little animation, I might put that online. And that thing, I think, is one of the big divisions in people. Do you do it because there's a deadline, or there's a financial reason, or would you be doing it if none of those things existed?
But it's like that in one of the very first episodes that I mentioned, that Charles Bukowski quote.
Yes.
Where he says, if you're planning a book and you say, I'll start it after this event's going to happen, then I'll start it, I'll do it the week after next. You're not a writer. A writer is somebody who has to sit down and write because it's in them like a burning itch from hell.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lovely quote, which I remember from lovely Noel Gordon, star of the much maligned Crossroads, and she was picking up an award. I think it was a TV Times award. She always got those awards. And she decided to take the reviewers to task, and she's looking straight down camera. And she says, some people would say that we on Crossroads are amateurs. Well, If you know what the word amateur means, it means for the love of. And if that is the case, then I am very proud to be an amateur. It's just, oh, lovely, lovely.
I've still not seen that TV play. And I so want to see it in particular for Mark Gatiss.
He's
Larry
brilliant.
Grayson.
Yeah.
I know they filmed loads, didn't they, of him doing stuff, like knowing full well that most of it would get used.
That's it, yeah.
What's another one? Larry Grayson. You go, when I read, I think it is called Shut That Door or something, a biography of him rather, and you just go, well, he had the biggest show on television, and then when he decided to resign from it, he thought, oh, I'll get offered something else by the BBC, I presume. No,
Nothing.
No.
Those characters again, they fascinate me. It never goes away. They're the ones who sometimes it's not a burning urge to work, but it is a burning urge to live.
Yes, yeah. Well, Larry Grayson. I mean, I think Generation Game finished about 81. The next time I saw him was on the Royal Variety Show in 1994, looking very old.
I was dead.
Yeah, I still got all my arms and my legs. I think, yeah, but where have you been? Because you were brilliant. I suppose maybe his style of humour went out of fashion a bit, but
I don't even think it was that. I literally think the opportunities weren't given it. Because if you go that style of, it seems hard to imagine this, but Little and Large was still prime time Saturday night in 1990.
yes.
And I remember doing it. I was down at the Slapstick Festival about 5 years ago. I think it was before lockdown, and there was Matthew Sweet was interviewing Little and Large. And I had said beforehand, but they were like, we thought Saturday night we'll do Little and Large at the Bristol Old Vic. Or might be Sunday night. And I said, I don't know how well that'll sell. Because I don't know anyone who goes, and then on Saturday night, it was Little. It's that very odd, and there's much of it. Things that existed, and you look in the Radio Times, and you go, what even was that? I don't know what that show was, because I remember Barry Cryer once asking him, I said, Barry, did you ever write for Little Large? He went, oh, no, Rob, I don't think I did that. And then about an hour later, he went, sorry, Rob, I do remember there was one Saturday afternoon. And that's such an interesting thing where you go, all of that. I can't remember what I was thinking about. Yeah, but that bit where you go, this is why when people go, why did alternative comedy need to happen? And you watch a lot of that stuff. And that's why I think now we need alternative comedy again, but it can't happen because so you have these incredible comics that are out there, and they just need to be given more space, because I do look now at a lot of the people who technically the old school would say, well, they're alternatives, and you go, McIntyre's not an alternative,
No.
you know, and you know, Rob Beckett and all, they're entertainers, and
Yeah.
they are Tarby and Bruce.
McIntyre is a very old-fashioned Saturday night television comedian. You know, it was in the days when Jim Davidson would host The Big Break.
Oh, he could have been hosting sort of 1977 ITV. He'd have felt right at home there.
Yeah.
But it is odd, isn't it? Because I think part of the problem at the moment is the fact that obviously we've got so much choice in terms of channels, and we can see certain people, and certain people are now ubiquitous. However, there's not an awful lot of telly being made, because now it all costs so bloody much, because everybody's got confused and thinks that television and cinema is the same thing, and it's not. So not much can be afforded to be made. And if you're going to make it with the eye of a film director, then one episode of Doctor Who will take 3 months, whereas it used to take a week.
Yeah, I was reading an article about this the other day, and said television has got stuck in this terrible catch-22 where they have to pay a fortune for A-list actors to go and be on it. And producers will say, well, why don't we just hire someone who's relatively unknown? And the answer is because then we can't attract the budget big enough to make the TV show. But part of the budget is the A-list actor. Yeah, I know that, but that's how the commissioning system works.
Yep. It's frustrating, isn't it? Because it does stop so much ability and so much talent from being unlocked. Whereas I can't help thinking if they'd just go, how did they do it in the 70s? Oh, let's try that. It'd bloody work. You could grade it to look as though it was shot on film. You just wouldn't have to fanny about so much. But there we go. I still think they should bring back Eldorado, so what do I...
They should literally pick up as if everything that in the previous 30 years, it had all still been going on. And so you see that Eldorado's begun to fade now.
Yes.
And some of them, they've still just left the corpses in the street of those actors that have died. Yeah, just lying there by a karaoke machine. Yeah.
Like there's just been a general strike on.
Well, with a mix Eldorado of folk horror, I think it'll work absolutely fine.
Hi, remember when Brookside had an outbreak of the plague? That was magnificent, and it had Brian Murphy, and who died recently, who everybody knew from George and Mildred, and he came into Brookside, and he was on Brookside for about 6 months, and then Phil Redden thought, plague, that's what we need, and someone brought a tropical disease back and wiped out half the close. I admire that.
Well, as opposed to Emmerdale that showed off with a big plane crashing, Phil said, let's go for something very, very small. Very. I love Brookside. Brookside is, what was he called? David Crosby. David Bing Crosby, as he was known.
I was thinking about him the other day.
I remember him. There was a bit where he was reading in a newspaper. He'd been in the local paper, and David Crosby, 67, and the way he played that fury of being. I mean, that whole what a great we're talking about. I mean, something I'll probably talk about tonight. Which is that Channel 4 thing where you go. So there's a union leader. In the close, and there's all of these politics, and there's the fury of the press, in the same way that I know a lot of people are celebrating EastEnders at the moment, and going the fury, the EastBenders fury, and all of that stuff is, and that's why we should never forget the press are never forward-thinking, progressive, or any of those things. They're always fucking 40 years behind everyone else.
This is very true.
The what I like was Matthew Sweet's book Shepperton Babylon, which you've read. Yes, I knew he would. Is how obvious that. But the bit where it turns out, people who used to be like snorting coke off these mirrored glass floors in the 1920s. Yeah, it's a very sordid world, isn't it? Whereas they go down to Shoreham by Sea, the new Hollywood, and an actress who died on the train down there. Yeah, I exactly remember that horrible story of
But I do love that because it just knocks that idea that everyone in the past looked as though they were in a BBC Shakespeare. And when you actually read about these people, some of whom were absolute. Samuel Pepys's diary, people think of that as being this great diary about the fire. But it's all the dirty stuff that I love. He's always waking up and being sick in a fireplace because he's pissed. Or there's the very famous one about his pornography. It was a copy of something called Les School de Phil, which means schoolgirls. And he wrote about that and how Utave, my prick did harden. And then he says he threw it away. But everybody claims he buried it. So it survived the fire. That was, in fact, his parmesan.
Yeah.
It was cheap. And the Barclays as well. It can't be the same. But it's like Kafka's huge collection of pornography.
I didn't know about.
Yeah, this was in James, the guy who wrote White Murk with Fins. I've forgotten his surname, James. He wrote about why Kafka matters. And he said, Kafka is this Kafka's bit. Oh, no, I awoke this morning to find out that I'd transformed into a barking dog. But it was, I was just, so he says, Kafka, there's this one picture that everyone loves of Kafka because he makes him look very sad. And that's his work picture. That's the picture
when it
ID
card.
Yes, you see the ID card picture. So that is then what we project on.
Right.
As he used to roll around on the floor laughing when he was reading the trial to his friends.
Yeah.
Then Joseph Kay's going, "Why are you arrested? He's in prison," and and that's what often gets missed out is that a lot of it is very dark humour. But the fact, I forget which Oxford college it is, which has under lock and key Kafka's porn. So all of again, it brings us back to that theme of all of the different versions of people.
Yeah.
That gets in the way of the singular myth, which is Kafka woke up feeling a bit sad, and then he had Blonde being sad, and then he looks at his big burly butcher father, and he thought, "Oh, this makes me sad," and then he eventually died being sad of the sad disease. Well, they call tuberculosis in those days.
But I get that the best thing about that, of course, is that when Kafka was on his deathbed, he insisted that all of his work be burned. And it was only some friends who rescued some manuscripts that prevented it. But I love the idea that he was on his deathbed. He could burn all my work. What about your enormous porn stash? That's fine. That deposit is Oxford.
I know a Dom. What do you say? Dom. Yes. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have made you turn right on that footpath here. We've gone a little bit of a longer way. But why there? We got back now.
We head that way. We'll make it back to the shed with no problem. Well, here we are back in the shed after just one ramble, but that was quite a ramble, wasn't it? That took in an awful lot. Robin, thank you for rambling with us.
No, I actually had another ramble yesterday with my friend Hedgehog Hugh. He's called Hedgehog Hugh because he's an expert on hedgehogs.
Right.
Hugh Warwick. And I find ramblings like so fascinating. Each time when my eyes open something new, they don't then close up. If you know what I mean. Do you get, like, once I became fascinated in the things that kind of grew around walls, then you just constantly looking at that. But moss. I'm currently going through a good week looking at moss.
Moss is fascinating.
Yeah, because they've got those little spores at the moment in the moss. And I've got to say, New Brighton, on the way to Literally, which was an excellent bookshop. I bought a book about the films of Kenneth Anger, a copy of The Listener from 1947, a poetry collection from Abacus, so it meant to have a nice cover, and about 5 other books, and it all came to a tenner. But as I walked along, I also saw a lovely selection of moss on the wall. So well done, New Brighton.
There we
Bought some books.
Yeah.
And I had a good bit of lemon cake as well. I mean, you can't ask for a better day than that, can you?
You really can't. That sounds perfect to me. So, and Al, have you enjoyed this ramble?
I've learned nothing at all about glass, but I've had great fun learning it.
Yeah, we didn't really go make a glass, but then again,
We started there. We did. We were there with the glass bridge, and then we used that glass bridge to travel into, and also Lead Bowery. That was looking through glass.
that was
Yeah. The stained glass.
staying well.
Chick Murray, and also this English Civil War.
Well, I suppose we.
I would say this is a pretty glass-heavy episode.
I'd say we've exhausted the topic of glass.
Yeah.
What else to know?
I bet it never comes up again because I literally don't think even if we had every Encyclopedia Britannica, that would be.
Well, we'll just put a hashtag of glass on. Maybe we'll become the specialist podcast for
I
glass.
can tell you a thing about glass. There's a friend of mine, Dan, who comes to my gigs, and he brings this every now and again. He brings me 19th century glass slides under which are various different diseases. Cell width of diseases that I could look at under a microscope. I have one.
The last smallpox sample in the wine.
All of those things are there. And I remember he gave them to me once. And I went, oh God, I've got to get a flight back from Aberdeen though in a couple of days. I wonder if there'll be. Turns out, of all the things you're allowed to take, you are allowed to take easy to sharpen glass slides filled with smallpox. Not an issue. Not an issue.
Did you pack the smallpox yourself? That's fine there.
Oh, Robin, listen, thank you so much for rambling with us today, and thank you everyone at home. We really hope that you enjoyed this week's meeting in the Rambling Club.
And the club meets every Friday, but if you'd like to get in touch in the meantime, here's how you can find your fellow members.
The official website is at www.tonyslattery.com, and you can get in touch on the contact form on that website.
We're at Twitter at Slattery Live. Please feel free to use the hashtag TSRC to discuss this week's topics.
I'm on Twitter too at the moment at Paul Carmichael V. However, both the Slattery Live and myself, we are all on Blue Sky as well.
Indeed. And Tony also has an old-fashioned Facebook group at www.facebook.com/group/TheTonySlattery.
And he's on Instagram at Tony_. And he's on.
And does admit you have got a lot of symbols on your computer that other people haven't got because most haven't got that. Oh.
It's a good one. That's
He's on Undergram at instaslag.tony/official.
Tony_Slattery_official.
But if people find that a bit confusing and they'd rather join the Rambling Club for themselves, Paul, how can they do that?
Let's see if we can get this bit right. So they head over to www.patreon.com/Slattery Live. We'd be delighted to welcome you. You can find all sorts of perks there for members. There are episodes before anybody else gets to hear them, all sorts of things. Come and have a listen. But Robin, we should say, if people want to find you on the socials, how do they do that?
I don't want them looking. I'm very shy. I'm on Blue Sky as well. So Blue Sky on Instagram, Robin Ince 1969. Which of course is lucky I don't do any acting work because that would give away the fact that my playing age isn't 35. But yeah, and I normally put up a couple of poems a day that I've written and stuff like that. So lovely. Well, yeah.
Wonderful.
And pictures of moss. Oh, an essential.
The world famous Bidston moth.
Do you know what? This is now annoying me, a low glass element, because last night, that pub that I went to, what was it called? You said that will still be open. The Amberts.
So John Averton?
Yeah,
James Averton.
James Averton, right? had the cleanest glass I've ever seen in terms of looking out, because I was sat on my own and I was watching Lickler do his darts thing. Didn't win in the end, but so there was darts there, I had a glass of wine, and I looked at the reflection, and it's one of the best reflections I've seen. Really, really clean glass. So another thing about New Brighton, well done, whoever your window cleaner is.
They'll be scoured,
Bloody good work.
scoured clean by the offshore breezes, I'd expect. So yes, please.
Well, you're not finished doing the social stuff. I mean,
If you'd like, if you have
a rambling club, I mean, you can't just suddenly have a straight narrative at the end. It fails dismally.
we've gone.
Every week it fails to.
Oh yes, we can't get the linear. You can't get the wood, you know. If you would like to talk to us about your favourite blast, please do get in touch by any of those methods. We'd be thrilled to hear from you.
And we will be back for another ramble next Friday at 5 to 5, and we hope that you'll join us again. In the meantime, it's a goodbye from myself, Paul Carmichael. It's a goodbye from Mr. Alan Lear.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from our very special guest, Robin Ince.
Go to Instagram and look at Glassy Witch. I've just realised there's a friend of mine who does a lot of glass work. It's really nice, so go and look at Glassy Witch. Bye. Should have mentioned Glass.
You have been listening to Tony's Slattery's Rambling Club with our special guest president, Robin Ince. It was accompanied by E. Stephen Fry as the voice of the bingo machine. Acting President Ince was assisted by E. Paul Carmichael and Alan Lear. The music was composed and performed by E. Michael Livesley and Andy Frizzle. Silly voices are by E. Michael Livesley and the show's concept is by E. Paul Carmichael. Our producers are Stuart Morris and Alan Dabbing, and the show's researchers is Sola Carmichael. The show's producers are Erica Lear and Mark Hutchinson. Our executive producer is Chris Castle, and the series executive producer is Mark Strickson. Tony's Slattery's Rambling Club is a Fanfaniddle production.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.